Another loaded show coming your way on today's San Francisco 49ers Report. I'm Chase Sr., and no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, I greatly appreciate all of you for making today's show a part of your day. What we're getting into, some positive news on the Brock Purdy injury front, bad news on Nick Bosa. What is going on with Fred Warner, and can San Francisco have a familiar turnaround in 2024 that they had in 2021? And a bonus topic, a George Kittle update as well. As for the latest on Brock Purdy, he was listed as day-to-day earlier this week due to an injury to his throwing shoulder. Kyle Shanahan met with the media just moments ago and said he doesn't have any concerns about his starting quarterback's availability to play against the Green Bay Packers and at Lambeau Field coming up here in Week 11. But I do want to remind everybody that Kyle Shanahan also said last week he had no concerns about George Kittle going into the game against the Seattle Seahawks, and then Kittle was a surprise scratch late in the week. Speaking of Niners-Packers, one of the great rivalries in the history of the National Football League, if you want me to do a Packers preview tomorrow morning before our live show tomorrow afternoon, we need 500 likes on this video. Support the show, smash that thumbs up icon, and let's get it. I can't wait to preview that ball game. Next up, as part of this conversation about Brock Purdy, let me pose this question to the people. Has Brock Purdy regressed? In 2024, his numbers are not as good as they were in 2023 when he was top 5 in MVP voting, but as always, context is very important. Brock Purdy's passer rating in his first 22 starts, he was so efficient. He took the league by storm. He surprised so many people with how he excelled and how great he played. And in his first 22 starts, his passer rating was 118. But in his last 15 starts, including the playoffs, that passer rating has gone down to 91.5. But there are a lot of reasons for why Purdy has struggled. Some on him, some circumstances he can't control. For instance, there have been a lot of injuries to his skill position players around him. There's been bad offensive line play. And you think back to training camp. No Trent Williams, a saga there with the contract. Brandon Ayuk contract dilemma. He didn't practice alongside Brock Purdy in training camp. He didn't play during the preseason either. And then during the regular season, Ayuk's out for the year. George Kittle's been in and out of the lineup. Deebo Samuel's been in and out of the lineup and inconsistent. And Purdy has had no Christian McCaffrey in the backfield and as a receiving target. The 49ers also somehow have gone from first in yards after the catch last year to dead last, 32nd in 2024. A big reason why their offensive numbers in general have tailed off. And the average separation at the time of reception and the catch has dropped from 12th in the NFL last year to dead last as well, 32nd in the National Football League. Now, it's not been all bad for San Francisco. You look at some of the raw numbers here. The Niners are second in total yards, right behind the Baltimore Ravens and ahead of the number one scoring offense in the NFL and the Detroit Lions. They're second in yards per play, fourth in net passing yards per attempt, fourth in rushing yards per attempt. They're eighth in points scored. That has been an issue. They've settled for a lot of field goals, but they're also 32nd in punts. That's always a good thing. Average yards per drive, first. They've had no problems moving the ball. They just struggle to capitalize their drives and dot the exclamation point on them by turning those drives into touchdowns, and instead, they've settled for a lot of field goals. Average points per drive, 10th, and in the red zone, their touchdown percentage is 26th. And I thought what Kyle Shanahan said today mirrors the numbers that we just looked at and the circumstances that we just discussed. I think Brock is playing at the exact same level as he is this year as compared to 2022 and in 2023. There have been different circumstances around him. And I mentioned those circumstances around him that Purdy can't control. Other notable Purdy numbers which point to him playing pretty solid football. He's third in the league in yards per attempt at 8.5. He's fifth in air yards per attempt, despite not having his long ball threat in Brandon Ayuk, 8.8 there. QBR, fifth at 67.4. He's sixth in the NFL in passing yards, despite him being middle of the pack in passing attempts. and his deep ball completion rate. Again, no Ayuk, no vertical threat to take the top off of the defense, to stress the defense up and down, 44.8%. That's 7th in the NFL. So has Purdy struggled a little bit? No doubt about it. But the circumstances around him haven't helped him either. Context is very important, as it always is in any type of argument and debate. What say you? Has Purdy been better or worse than last year? B for better, W for worse. Let me know what you're thinking down in the comment section right now. As for some more good news, looks as though Brock Purdy is going to play. George Kittle said definitively, after missing last week's game with that hamstring injury, quote, "I will be playing on Sunday." Going into that game last week, I fittingly had said, I thought Kittle was the player who the Niners could least afford to lose offensively, thinking about their offensive season, picking up yards after the catch, separation, coming down with 50-50 balls, him as a blocker, him in the red zone. The Niners missed him literally in all of those areas against Seattle. I didn't include leadership. The 49ers could have used George Kittle's leadership to mentally come through in the guts of the game. And how about on some of those money downs late, when the Niners could have iced the ball game if they were able to simply move the chains on that last drive. Instead, they couldn't, and Seattle was able to march 80 yards down the field, led by Geno Smith. This year, George Kittle has been the best tight end in the NFL, so he will be a huge boost to this Niners offense against Green Bay. 43 catches, 560 yards, 7 touchdowns, already more than he had last year, along a 43. And, of course, he's so physical and picking up yards after the catch and a great blocker. The bad news here for the Niners, Nick Bosa, he will not practice today on this Wednesday, and the 49ers signed back Jonathan Garvin to the practice squad. That tells me that Nick Bosa probably not going to play in this game because San Francisco wanted to add another depth piece to the practice squad by bringing in another edge rusher in Jonathan Garvin. Kyle Shanahan did say earlier this week that Bosa will be monitored all week, but judging by Bosa's body language on the sideline, during his post-game press conference and the words that he used, he said, hopefully it's not going to be too long, kind of indicates to me that he might not play in this game against Green Bay. He also had to fight through his respective injuries, hip and oblique, to play against Tampa Bay 2 weeks ago. And then he had to deal with those injuries again against Seattle. And he said because he was overcompensating, he hurt his other oblique. Nick Bosa's impact on Sunday, it was felt when he was on the field. The Niners missed him when he was off the field. Seattle was able to muster 3.3 yards per play when Bosa was on the field Sunday. When he was off the field, they averaged 6.1 yards per play, nearly double, and Seattle scored both of their touchdowns when Bosa was not on the field. Just couldn't give it a go. And the Niners just simply don't have enough depth along the defensive line. That was an issue for me going into the year. That was an issue going into the NFL trade deadline. And the Niners didn't address it at the deadline. They didn't really address it in the draft at all. They didn't take a defensive end, a young developmental piece, and Robert Beal has really given this team nothing in year 2. Bosa's putting together a spectacular 2024, by the way. Overall Pro Football Focus grade of 90.3. That's top 10 among edge rushers. A pass rush grade of 87.2. Run defense grade of 74.6. He has the most pressures in the NFL with 52. He has the second most hurries with 34. He's 6th in quarterback hits with 10. And he's tied for 4th in sacks after those 2 sacks against Seattle on Sunday. 7 sacks for the season on 320 pass rush snaps. So who you got if Bosa cannot play? SF for the Niners, GB for the Green Bay Packers. Once again, let your voices be heard. So we got to the positive news on Brock Purdy, as well as George Kittle. The bad news on Nick Bosa. Still to come. What is going on with Fred Warner? Alarming numbers that we have to talk about. And could San Francisco have a familiar turnaround here in 2024, reminiscent to what they did in 2021? Today's Niners Report, sponsored by Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. the best place to get that real money sports action because it's the largest independently run daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and they put their numbers first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. They also offer Venmo, and if you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So hop on that deal, prizepicks.com/CLNS, and use the code CLNS. Some selections looking ahead to Niners-Packers. Christian McCaffrey, more than 78.5 rushing yards. Christian Watson, less than 43.5 receiving yards. So you pick two or more players, you choose more or less on their projected stat lines for a game or a season. We'll put that link down below in the comments section and in the description of today's Niners Report. All right, another topic to get to here on the program. Glad you're rocking with us. If you're still watching, give me a real one down in the comments section so I know who the real ones are. What is going on with Fred Warner? When he started the year, he was playing at a Defensive Player of the Year level, and he was a legitimate Defensive Player of the Year candidate. But over the last several weeks, his play has tailed off. And early in the year, he was making so many disruptive plays as a blitzer, against the run, against the pass, the peanut punch, a patented Fred Warner play where he was forcing fumbles. In coverage, he was a stallion. Weeks 1 through 5, according to Pro Football Focus, his PFF grade, number 1 among all linebackers in the NFL at 93. Weeks 6 through 11, he's the 25th graded linebacker. And his PFF grade drops 30-plus points to 61.4. And one of the strengths of his game is being so good as an off-ball linebacker when dropping back in coverage. Well, in his first 4 games, he was targeted 9 times. He gave up 4 catches. He intercepted 2 passes, more disruptive plays. In his last 6 games, thanks to Jesse Naylor, friend of the program for these numbers, he's been targeted 30 times, and he's given up 30 catches. Not a lot of them have gone for explosive plays, a lot of checkdowns and a lot of safe throws. But with our eyes, Fred Warner has not looked like the same player. There are a lot of reasons for why he might be struggling. The defensive line play in front of him hasn't been that good. San Francisco, throughout the course of a ball game, they've really worn down because they don't have enough depth in the trenches. The complementary linebacker play, it hasn't been there. Fred Warner has missed his running mate in Dre Greenlaw, Devondre Campbell, D. Winters, Demetrius Flanagan fouls when he was playing. Not the caliber of player that Greenlaw is, who last year was a borderline All-Pro. Against New England, too, Fred Warner did hurt his ankle. And that's about the time that his numbers have started to tail off a little bit. And Fred Warner, maybe he's looked a little bit off. So has the entire team. So is this a concern long term? It could be Fred Warner trying to overcompensate and do too much for a defense that's struggling. I side with that as compared to him being washed. Last here on the show, can the Niners turn it around? Remember back in 2021 when San Francisco started 3-5? We thought the season was over, but then they won 2 games in a row. They evened up their record at 5-5, and then San Francisco finished 10-7. They were a wild card team. They went on the road and beat the Cowboys in the wild card round. They beat the number 1 seeded Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field as the snow was coming down in the divisional round. And then they had a 10-point lead against the Rams in that NFC Championship game, and they did lose with Jimmy Garoppolo as their quarterback. A lot hinges on this game Sunday against the Green Bay Packers on the road. Because right now, San Francisco has a 22% chance to make the playoffs according to the New York Times playoff picture model. A win against the Packers will improve their chances to about 36%. All models are a little bit different. A loss against the Packers, San Francisco probably doomed. They would have 11% chance of making the playoffs. But if San Francisco wins against Green Bay on the road and wins against Buffalo on the road, those chances skyrocket up to 55%. Will the Niners make the playoffs? Why for yes and for no? The defense then was much better than it is now, but the offense also is better now than it was then.